so cute. Nikki's got to go, so she's leaving. Have a good one.
Thanks.
And I already missed Will. Will was here. He was sitting right here.
You did not miss Lindsay.
Yeah, this is the first week in a while that Lindsay's just actually not here. Because she had a meeting.
Yeah, she had a meeting.
But otherwise, you know, Dan's here.
Hello.
And Roland's here. Oh, that's...
Yeah, which way we're doing?
Yeah. And Michael's here. Are those new sunglasses?
Yes.
Okay.
How's the Dark Wizard?
Look good.
They look good. I like the little... What's the name of the thing on the side when it bends in?
Arms.
Sure.
It's like a dent. Like a little, like... I don't know if there's a word for it. I like the look of it.
Thank you. I think.
It's like
He's asking a question. I feel
he's
like
from the future.
you won't pull it off the show. Whatever.
No, it's fine. I just didn't know if there was a word for it.
Not that I know.
Like a arm...
They're arms.
Arm crimp.
Yeah, we'll call it. Yeah.
Arm
Trademark
crimp.
that.
Arm crimp. Cool, thanks. I was right. It was 6 batteries. I thought it was 6, but I wasn't like sure. Because I haven't used this thing in a million years. Man. Seems like it's fine. I mean, when I last used it, it worked fine. Oh, man. Okay, so tomorrow is our finale of Link's Awakening. And to wrap everything up, we thought it would be interesting to show off the... I mean, what we're doing is we're showing off the extra features of both the Switch and the Game Boy Color version. The Switch version has got what is essentially Nintendo's attempt at Zelda Maker and testing out what that would be with Dante's Dungeons. On the Game Boy Color version, though, it allowed you to connect a Game Boy printer and actually print out some of the pictures of your adventure, which was... It was a really neat thing. At the time, it was niche, and now looking back, it's super niche. Most people don't, know much about the feature, and most people at the time did not have a Game Boy printer, but I did. I loved the Game Boy camera, and one of the big problems I was having is I was trying to figure out if it was possible to connect a Game Boy printer to a Game Boy player for the GameCube, and if it's possible, how? Like, what cables do you need? So here's what I have. This is a standard Game Boy link cable. This is a second gen link cable. The first gen link cables were one cable on each end, and they were this. This is the first gen cable plug, and this is what was used on the original Game Boys. They're really big. The second gen plugs were smaller, and the second gen plugs are basically the same thing, but they're smaller. They were used on Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Color, and that's what these use. But the games are still the same. So after the original Game Boy came out, and they were, they had used the big plugs. When the Pocket came out, they started issuing these, which are second gen cables that have both old and new plugs on them. Then, don't worry, this goes somewhere. The Game Boy Advance came out, and the Game Boy Advance used these cables. And this is actually the same cable on both ends. It just has different plugs. And the idea was that you could put a cable. You could like daisy chain these together to have up to 4 players playing Game Boy Advance games. You could actually play 4 players on the original Game Boy too. You just needed this thing, which fortunately came with my copy of F1 Race as a kid. And it's these big Game Boy plugs, but it's on each side, so you could actually have a little 4-player race. Technology. Anyway, so here's something interesting I learned. So what I needed to do, essentially, is the Game Boy player is a Game Boy Advance plug. The Game Boy printer is a second-gen Game Boy plug. And I was like, I need a cable to connect these, because tomorrow during the stream, I would ideally like to run the GameCube and show what's going on, but then print to the printer at the same time. I can always pull out the cart and put it into an actual Game Boy and use this cable. But I was like, if there's a cable that connects, this second gen port to a Game Boy Advance port, then I can just use a cable and I can show it all on screen. And I was like, that would be really cool. Turns out they make them. I don't have one, but Roland might have one, and he said he would check when he's at the store tomorrow. But then I was reading a little bit, and I was reading an article on Wikipedia that talked about these plugs. And it turns out the second gen Game Boy plug is apparently basically the same as a Game Boy Advance plug. The big difference is that on a Game Boy Advance plug, they added this little protrusion on top. I don't know if you'll be able to see that well with the camera, but they added a little protrusion on top with the...
Yeah, you can see.
Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, it's basically the same. The corners at the bottom are also rounded, and these are squared off. Which means, because these are squared off, you can't plug this into the daisy chain. But, again, this is going somewhere. The corners are rounded off, or the corners are squared off on the Game Boy player, which means the second gen Game Boy plug will technically plug into a Game Boy player. The question is, will it work? And that's what I'm hoping to find out. This is essentially the same as the Game Boy player plug, essentially. And from what I've read, as long as you're playing Game Boy games and not Game Boy Advance games, it should work. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve, because the Game Boy printer is not a Game Boy Advance game. It's a peripheral for the original Game Boy. So I'm hoping that by plugging up this second gen thing and this second gen thing, I'm hoping that it'll work. I don't know, but I'm going to test it, because if it works, I don't need the cable. If it does, then I'll have Roland see if there's one tomorrow. So yeah, let's see if this functions, or if, or if I missed something and I'm just wrong on several counts. It's the thief picture. All right, so I don't have any paper in here, but I think it will at least, if it's going to work, it should at least cooperate. It should.
You
do
have
something.
paper though, not. Just
I know.
in it.
It sent a signal. It works. It works. I also learned a lot of interesting things about the plugs. The other interesting thing I just learned is that there's nothing, apparently, that the printer sends to the game as a message of, there is no paper. It just attempted to print for the entire duration of the print, and nothing was accomplished. But this works! Awesome! I learned so much about link cables today. Link cables. Anyway, cool. I actually loaded up one of Dan's saves to go into the camera shop, because I realized I had never went into the camera shop in the Let's Play. And by not going into the camera shop, I'm pretty sure there'll be unique dialogue. So I was like, okay, wait, don't do that. Load up Dan's. So I didn't change anything on Dan's, but I loaded it up to go in there and try it. And I can't believe that works. That's really convenient. The other thing is that it's kind of a tight fit. It's the same size, but there's something at least semi-different about the Game Boy Advance plug going into the Game Boy player than the second gen Game Boy plug. It clearly functions, but when you're going to push it in, you have to push a little harder than the Game Boy Advance plug. But it does work. Cool. Really cool.
Put the paper in and print.
No, we should save that for when we do the thing.
But you have to make sure it works.
If it doesn't work, then we'll find out live. That's how I feel.
Okay.
So let me turn the printer off and see if there's something. If I hit print, Print Arrow 2, which is the printers are connected. Man, yeah, the cable works. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, awesome. Well, then we're set. And what I'll do tomorrow is when we finally get to that point, I'll probably flip this table around and sit the printer like here so the camera can see it and just see the thing coming out, and it'll be real neat. It'll be real neat. Man, that's really cool. I had no idea that this would work. It's just a normal second gen dual link Game Boy cable, and that'll connect. Again, the article that I was reading said the thing is it'll only work if you're working specifically with Game Boy stuff. If it's a Game Boy Advanced thing, the Game Boy Advance data cannot be sent on a Game Boy cable like this. But if it's just Game Boy products, then it'll work. And it works. And tomorrow, when we actually do the stream, I'll find out if the printer still functions. Because I have... Thomas was actually very kind, probably a year ago, gave me a brand new spindle of Game Boy printer paper. And it's actually quite thrilling that we're going to get a chance to use it for a project. This kind of stuff just like gets me all excited. I'm all happy now. All right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, let's meet back tomorrow, shall we?